Okay. Typical. Okay. Okay, call it to order. Mr. Chair, I'd like to commence the meeting with the land acknowledgement. I acknowledge with respect that we're in Robinson Huron Treaty Territory, that the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and known as Boating. Boating is the home of Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. Mr. Chair, moving along, I've had no advisement of pecuniary interest. Is there any? Seeing none, we'll record none. I'd like to say that we do have a quorum present. We have 3 members present, so we can continue with business. If I could have a motion for the minutes of the July 27th meeting. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'd like to advise if there's anybody in the gallery for application A3022, that would be 31 Celine Court. That would be tab 5 on the agenda. Is there anyone in the gallery? That application, I would like a motion to defer that application to the September 28th meeting. There seemed to be significant confusion over the notice that went. There was some neighborhood dialogue that was incorrect and, in my opinion, confused far too many people. I'd like to recirculate. So if I could have a motion to defer that to September 28th, and the applicant is aware of that.
I'll make a motion to defer.
Thank you. Similarly, tab 6 which is application A3122. I would like a motion sine die. The legal description that was circulated was not complete. I wasn't given a complete legal description. It's come to my attention that there should have been more to that description. And again, I'd ask that the application be deferred, but sine die. I'm not sure how long it'll take to get that information. Thank you. Again, both notices will be recirculated when they are back on the agenda. So, Mr. Chair, we'll move right to tab 1 on the agenda, which is, before I do that, is there anyone in the gallery that's not an applicant or an agent of an applicant, but someone that wishes to comment to an application? There are, and which application would that be? A27, that would be tab 2. Okay, we'll remember to call you up. Okay, so the first matter on your agenda is A2622, an application from Jason Marshall and Aaron Whitty, and Jason is here. I know he is. There he is. If you're comfortable with speaking, if you want to speak and you're comfortable speaking loud enough from where you are, please feel free to stay where you are and speak. If not, come to the podium and then we'll sanitize after each person that goes to the podium. So moving right along to A2622, Jason Marshall and Aaron Whitty are the registered owners of 797 Airport Road. It is located on the west side of Airport Road between Baseline and Point Duchesne Drive. The subject property is designated rural area in the official plan and is zoned R1 estate residential. Relief is requested from the provisions of bylaw 2005-150 as amended to facilitate the construction of a 12.19 meter by 8.53 meter or 40 foot by 28 foot detached garage by reducing the minimum required north interior side yard and increasing the maximum permitted height. Specifically, sections 9.5.3.1 requires a minimum interior side yard of 3.5 meters. The applicant proposes to reduce the north interior side yard to 1.2 meters for the proposed garage only. Section 9.5.3.2 sets out a maximum building height for an accessory building of 6 meters. The applicant seeks to increase the maximum building height for the proposed garage from 6 meters to 6.6 meters. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and by posting on the city website. And I've had no response to date. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to the following internal departments and external agencies for their review. Building, Planning, Engineering, Fire, Legal, and Sault Ste. Marie Conservation Authority had no objections. PUC Services and Bell Canada Right-of-Way did not respond. Building Division staff has no objection to this application, but any proposed future development on the property will require compliance with the Ontario Building Code and all applicable authorities. A review and approval of the City Building Division and issuance of a building permit will also be required. Building Division noted that during their review, they found an outstanding permit number 17155 for a garage and breezeway, and they asked that the minor variance be conditional on this permit being finalized. Considerations for the committee are there's been no objections from staff or neighboring property owners. In my opinion, Building Division's request could be included as an advisement on any approval and not as a condition. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair.
No, I didn't know about that was
You just contact Building Division and arrange an inspection, or for whatever's still open, it's the final permit. If you want to email me when you get back home, I can give you the phone number, or just contact the Building Division and they can give it to you and they'll give you the information. And the inspector you'd be talking to is Frank Ventrovato. Okay.
I'll motion with that advisement, just the advisement, not as a condition.
I'll second. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Unlock the door.
Okay, moving on to the next matter on our agenda. And again, we'll have commenting from the gallery. Mr. Makinen, are you in attendance? Right there. Okay, I should look that way. Okay, application A2722, Paul Makinen and Nolan Makinen are the owners of 325 Old Gooley Bay Road. The subject property is located on the west side of Old Gooley Bay Road between 3rd Line East and 4th Line East. The subject property is designated rural area in the official plan and is zoned RA rural area. The intent of the application, relief is requested from the provisions of bylaw 2005-150 as amended to legitimize the location of the existing 3.7 meter by 9.2 meter storage shed by reducing the required side yard setback, recognizing that the setback increases alongside the length of the shed's exterior wall. Specifically, section 8.5.2 requires a minimum side yard of 5 meters. The applicant seeks to reduce the north interior side yard to 1 meter for the existing storage shed only. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and by posting on the city website. The owners of the abutting property at 305 Old Gooley Bay Road submitted the following comments. Bylaw requirement 2005-150 clearly states that the minimum interior side yard be 5 meters. Bylaws and city ordinances protect adjoining landowners from incursion and from buildings that should not have been illegally placed on property lines. The existing storage shed should be moved according to bylaws. When the applicants moved into 325 Old Gooley Bay Road, they cut trees on my property beyond the property line, even after a survey was provided by Tulloch surveyors. I have had trees cut down. I have had logs dumped on my property. I've had a trailer placed on my property belonging to the applicants. Further to this, I have had empty 40-gallon steel drums and plastic pails piled between the maintenance storage shed and my property line. I also have a storage shed that is right on my property line on the back of my property adjoining Mr. Makinen. Talking to Mr. Makinen is fruitless as he seemingly does whatever he thinks he should with little regard for municipal bylaws. Further, I've had survey marking tape taken from property stakes and jammed into my mailbox with a note from the applicant. I have this in my possession if the city council would like to view it. Mr. Makinen has demonstrated a lack of respect for property lines and for the integrity of my property. It is only due to city inspectors that I was able to have his logs and trailer removed from my property. Providing allowances and variances to the applicants only reinforces negative actions from the applicants. The shed should be moved according to the bylaws of the city of Sault Ste. Marie. I would like to thank the city of Sault Ste. Marie and the aldermen for their efforts and time. As I am currently negotiating the sale of my property to a real estate developer, I have concerns that any incursions within this area will set a precedent that will compromise the future of my own real estate. Are you folks the owner of 805? Okay. You will be invited to comment. You don't necessarily repeat your same comments. You're invited to comment if you have something to add to those comments. And just so you understand, the committee is not here to negotiate or determine whether right was wrong in the past. Their only focus can be on the variance that's requested and your comments that relate to that. The following rebuttal was submitted by Mr. Makinen, the subject property owner. I have not cut trees on his property. I have brushed along the west property line, and in fact, he did the same on the south property line. His marking tape fell to the ground, so I put up marking rope in its place. The rope is still there to define the west property line. A bear knocked down the marking tape on the south property line. I wish Mr. Patterson would stick to the facts and not twist them to his advantage. The back of a boat trailer encroached on the south property line. A log rolled off the pile and part of it was on his property. Both of these issues were resolved within a day of receiving a letter from him last December. I moved both items immediately. This was done on my own regard without any involvement from city bylaw officials. If officials had attended to this matter as he falsely claims, their records and notes from the site visit would show that. The attached letter is what I sent to him after he informed me of his concerns. My letter clearly shows that I was willing to cooperate and be amicable, contrary to his claims stating otherwise. The letter he would like council to see is the same. I have done nothing to compromise his current or future real estate. I hope any future real estate development on his property doesn't compromise my property. Any items stored on my property are not a danger to the environment in any way. I would never endanger my property, my neighbor's property, or the environment. The yard is kept neat and clean. Any stored items are out of sight from the road or from any neighbor's sightlines. Clearly, this is an issue with a disgruntled neighbor. In speaking with other neighbors in the area, most have had issues with Mr. Patterson. I know we will all be happy to see him leave. Now to the matter at hand. You have my letter to the Committee of Adjustment dated June 28, 22, stating my case. Pictures that accompanied the letter show that the storage shed is out in the middle of the woods on my property. It's been there for 15 to 20 years, built by the previous owners. So why the issue from Mr. Patterson now? It is my understanding that the committee deals with minor variances, not disgruntled neighbors. Since this issue came to my attention, I have fully cooperated with city building officials who, as you know, will issue a building permit pending approval from your committee. I tried to resolve this matter with Mr. Patterson without getting the city involved, as my letter to him shows. My son and I moved into the neighborhood in February of 2020 and have had zero issues with any other neighbors, and they have had zero issues with us. We all get along great, help each other, and have an excellent relationship, with the exception of Mr. Patterson. I look forward to the committee meeting on the 24th, and I look forward to resolving this issue and everyone moving on. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to the following internal departments and external agencies for their review: Building, Planning, Engineering, Fire, Legal, Sault Ste. Marie Conservation Authority, and Algoma Public Health had no objections. PUC Services and Bell Canada Right-of-Way did not respond. Considerations for the committee. The owner advises that the existing structure was built approximately 15 to 20 years ago by the previous owner without the benefit of a building permit. He, the current owner, applied for the required building permit and was advised that a minor variance was needed because a portion of the structure did not meet the required setback requirement. The structure is on a concrete slab, so is difficult to move. As a result, a variance application was submitted and is before the committee for consideration today. There's been no objections from staff. An objection was submitted from the budding property owners. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair.
Questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Speak to this matter. Do you want to come to the microphone?
I do want some things. That point, you did not know that that building was there before. So just because I do not have knowledge of the building, but and I have no relationship with this. He did touch these. That shed is filled with 40 gallon drums of plastic, about 6 feet high in my viewpoint. So yes, I absolutely, I want to move it. I don't see it again. It's 50 facts. That's what the facts are. We want to be honest with neighbors. To see how should we.
Any questions from Mr. Patterson from committee members? Mr. Chair, it seems like a pretty straightforward application, in my opinion.
I just want to get a point correct for the minutes. So the drums that you say are in the shed, you can see the drums, or is it the shed that you can see?
40 gallon. And I explained this, that's my site. And the door should. It goes about 2 feet high. So very antagonistic. Therefore, like I said, giving him any type of easement, so he found no garbage on my site.
Can I ask a question to Mr. Mackinnon, Mr. Chair? Mr. Mackinnon, I don't know whether those are there or not on the side of that shed. Is it possible to move those to the other side of the shed?
And where they are, they're of this side line. There's next portion that separates the property.
Okay.
And I think I sent pictures and ended up four elevations that show that I can't see this place, you can't see mine, none of the neighbors can't see any of the stuff that was stored, as I said on notice of the committee. There's nothing in them, they're empty. There's some pails, there's a few drums. They're not putting anything, we put them there, they're out of the way. As far as garbage, Mr. Patterson, who said blue blocks and green blocks near the road, this house is deep into his property. And bears got his property and not garbage. And I don't want to make it personal, but that's what this is. I'm here for that application. He's got garbage strewn on his property. I can see it from my property. To answer your question, sir, yes.
Mr. Chair, maybe all right if I just have some, if I have Mr. Mackinnon, can I approach him?
That's the shed. That's the west. It's about property. Oh, it's back. It's you can't see it. It's back probably 300 feet. I don't know. Can't see it.
Like to explain what he showed me.
Sure.
So, Mr. Chair, I mean,
Yeah, I can see.
Mr. Mackinnon's property is over here to the left. See the bush. To the right of his property is Patterson, and you can see the bush. Those are the comments that I'll make. I don't see any- Yeah, whenever you're like, yeah.
Well, wait till you hear his motion.
Okay, so go ahead.
First.
Well, let's, if there's any other
Anything else?
comment, if you want to, I don't know if Mr. Greco will.
Just to be clear, the application is for a variance for an existing structure that is not over the property, but still within the property lines.
Okay, so we're only looking at that variance.
Portion of the,
There, okay, and it's a portion of it, yeah, I can tell by the site plan, so. If those other issues that are being referred to, there's other departments that can be approached if there's an issue with garbage. Like, is that something the committee
Yes,
needs to consider? Okay,
So whatever, I'm good.
all right.
Okay, so,
thanks, John.
Mr. Chair, I'm willing to motion for the application as it sits here. With,
Condition would be storage not be on that side.
I don't know if I'm prepared to make that motion, Mr. Chair. I don't know that that's,
I agree with you.
I don't know that that's
think
our,
it's-
I don't know that that's in our prerogative as a committee, and my motion stands that the application should be,
I would second.
Seconded. All in favor? Council no.
oh,
so are you not in favor of the motion?
I'm just, I'm not. No, it's the condition I have.
Okay.
And I'm open.
All in favor then? Thank you. Yes? No. But you can call the building division if you feel that it's garbage or it would be building division that would determine whether that's an inappropriate place for those. Yeah. But the issue, I think, is your view of those drums. And it would be the building, but you're permitted to go for a variance, but you can contact the building division if you feel that there's an issue with where he's storing those plastic pails and drums, and they will address that. And they could call the building division and get a, it's up to them to decide whether the outside storage is inappropriate or not.
It was very unfortunate that we ordered some. I believe that's supposed to one.
Said I didn't know.
No, we just can't. We can't.
So it's not,
There's a 20-day appeal period where the matter can be appealed or not.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chair, moving on to the next application and tab 2. Sorry, tab 3 would be application A2822, an application from Carmine Biasucci and Delia Grandinetti, and I know Carmine's here. The applicants are the owners of 324 Pine Shore Drive. It runs from the south side of Point Louise Drive through Pine Shore Drive and abuts Lake Superior. The subject property is designated rural area in the official plan and is on the R1 estate residential. Relief is requested from the provisions of bylaw 2005-150 as amended to facilitate the construction of a two-story, 12.95 meter by 9.1 meter detached garage complete with a 117.225 square meter of living space in the second story by permitting a garage to be constructed that is larger than the main building, by increasing the maximum permitted garage height, and by increasing the maximum floor area of a secondary living unit. Specifically, sections 9.1.7, the gross floor area of an accessory building shall not exceed the gross floor area of the main building on the same lot. The applicant seeks to increase the maximum permitted gross floor area of the proposed garage from 82.68 square meters He had requested 118.45 square meters, but has indicated to me that he will amend that to the suggested 100 square meters as suggested by the planning office. Section 9.5.3.2, maximum permitted height for accessory buildings is 6 meters. He seeks to increase the maximum building height for the proposed garage from 6 meters to 7.925 meters. Section 4.15.6, maximum accessory use second unit size 90 square meters. Increase the maximum accessory use second unit size 90 square meters. Had requested 117.225, is willing to change that to 100 square meters. Public response, notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties and by posting a sign on site and by posting on the city website. The owners of 304, 312, 318, 332, and 336 Pine Shore Drive submitted letters of support for the application and proposed project. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to the following internal departments and external agencies for their review: Building, Engineering, Fire, Legal, Sault Ste. Marie Conservation Authority, and Algoma Public Health had no objections. PUC Services and Bell Canada right-of-way did not respond. Building Division staff has no objection to this application, but the proposed development on the property will require compliance with the Ontario Building Code and all applicable authorities. A review and approval from the City Building Division and issuance of a building permit will also be required. Planning Division staff is of the opinion that considering an increase in the gross floor area regulations for the accessory garage building is appropriate. The main building is small, measuring only 100 square meters or 11,000 square feet, which can consequently limits an accessory building's gross floor area to an unreasonably small size. Suggestions: 1, planning staff recognize that a height variance from 6 meters to 7.92 meters is quantitatively significant. However, the subject property is large enough to accommodate such a height increase without negatively impacting the character of the community, as the proposed structure is located well beyond the front lot line and is visually buffered by mature trees. It is also set back 4.27 meters, 14 feet from the nearest side lot line, which reduces its perceptible height. Increasing the height limit also allows for traditional and locally appropriate roof structures, such as gable roofs, to be used in building designs without their associated impacts on usable floor space. And 2, the footprint of the 3-bay garage results in a 117 square meter space on the upper story. It is the opinion of staff that a variance to permit a second unit to occupy this entire space is not minor and does not meet the intent of the zoning bylaw accessory use second units as subject to a maximum size regulation to maintain the units as subordinate and accessory to the primary dwelling unit on the same lot. Given the nature of the property's location, planning staff would support an amended variance to permit a second unit of no greater than 100 square meters. And again, Mr. Biasucci has indicated to me that he is agreeable to reducing his request to 100 square meters. Engineering staff had no comments, provided Algoma Public Health has no concern about the septic supporting the second dwelling. Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority advised that any development on the subject property will require a site plan review and may require a permit from the Conservation Authority. Considerations for the committee are: 5 letters of support were submitted from neighboring property owners. Planning staff are supportive of the request to increase the gross floor area of the proposed garage from 82.68 meters to 118.45 meters, and to increase the maximum building height from 6 meters to 7.92 meters. Planning staff do not support the increase to the maximum accessory use second unit size as requested. They are supportive of increasing the maximum accessory use second unit size from 90 square meters to 100 square meters. And those are some of my submissions, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Biasucci is in the gallery.
Make a motion approved. I don't need to mention that the change is agreement. Okay, motion to approve.
Thank you. And you can stay or leave. Okay, moving to tab 4. And the next matter on our agenda is application A2922, Patter Properties, Inc. And there he is behind the camera. Patter Properties, Inc. are the owners of 121 to 123 Algon Street, described as the northeast quarter of section 24. It is located on the southeast corner of King Street and Algon Street. The subject property is designated commercial in the official plan and is zone C2, central commercial, and is subject to site plan control. Relief is requested from the provisions of bylaw 2005-150 as amended to facilitate the conversion of the ground floor commercial space to residential units. Specifically, section 3.2.1 of bylaw 2005-150 states that no dwelling units on the ground floor. The applicant seeks to permit a dwelling unit to be located on the ground floor of each of the 2 structures that are on the property, which would make 2 additional units. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and by posting on the city website. No response was received. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to the following internal departments and external agencies for their review. Building, Planning, Engineering, Fire, Legal, and Conservation Authority had no objections. PUC Services and Bell Canada right-of-way did not respond. Building staff had no objections to this application, advising that a permit will be required from the building division for the conversion from commercial space to residential. Based on 5.4.2 of 2005-150, no additional parking will be required for the proposed residential use. When a new use commences in an existing building located in the downtown or the traditional commercial zone, no additional parking is required beyond that already supplied, provided that the building's gross floor area is not increased. In this case, it is not. Considerations, no objections from staff or neighboring property owners. Building division request could be included as an advisement rather than a condition. And I'd have to say that they have removed their advisement. I didn't update my comment. And Mr. Eder is here if you wish to speak to him. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair. In favor?
This number.
Thank you. Again, tab 5 was deferred. Tab 6 was deferred. We'll move to tab 7, which is application A3222, an application from Allen and Louise Avery. The subject property is 284 Point Louise Drive. Mr. Avery and Mr. Gordak and his solicitor are in attendance. Louise and Allen Avery are the owners of 284 Point Louise Drive. It is located on the southeast corner of Point Louise Drive and Harriet Street and abuts St. Mary's River. The subject property is designated rural in the official plan and is zoned R1 estate residential. Relief is requested from the provisions of bylaw 2005-150 as amended by reducing the exterior side yard and increasing the maximum permitted height of the boathouse structure to legitimize the existing 62.8 square meter second story second unit addition. Specifically, sections 4.11.5 and 9.5.2 set out a maximum exterior side yard of 9 meters with a reduction of 25%, leaving it at 6.75 meters. The applicant seeks to further reduce the northwesterly exterior side yard from 6.5 meters to 2.4 meters for the boathouse structure only. Section 9.5.3.2 says a maximum permitted building height for the structure is 6 meters. The applicants seek to increase the permitted building height for the boathouse structure and upper level second unit from 6 meters to 7.2 meters. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties and by posting a sign on site and posting on the city website. The property owners of 285 Point Louise Drive commented as follows. We have known Mr. and Mrs. Avery since we moved to Point Louise area about 10 years ago. They've welcomed us to the neighborhood since day one. Their property and home are what most of us who are building strive to achieve. They take considerable pride in their property. We hold no reservations to fit and character of their home and surrounding areas and buildings. The owners of 19 Harriet, 35 Harriet, 267 Point Louise Drive, 268 Point Louise Drive, and 297 Point Louise Drive had no objections to the variance application. The owners of 64 Allagash Drive submitted the following comments, excuse me. With reference to the application from Louise and Allen, please accept our full support for this request. I would be remiss if I didn't voice a few of my concerns for the reasoning behind this application. First of all, I have been visiting this property for the last 50 years or so, and the footprint, to the best of my knowledge, has not changed. Granted, a few positive improvements to the building have taken place, but they have truly been a work in progress, primarily by Allen, a professional engineer retired, who was assisted by all the necessary tradesmen to ensure a proper job was completed. This work in progress was completed over several years as a hobby and not as a rebuild such as the principal residence. I cannot recall as to when the work was completed on the boathouse, but I do remember years ago we were invited for a tour of the finished product, which was truly impressive. Clearly, one of our local NIMBYs has taken issue with Louise and Allen's project here, and we are today dealing with a property improvement that was completed 10 plus years ago. This is undoubtedly costing Louise and Allen undue stress and money for simply making a dilapidated boathouse a place to be enjoyed by their family and friends. I am very certain if the city building inspectors were to survey many of the older cottages converted to houses, which a few of the NIMBYs live in, they would have similar issues and be able to cause them the same grief as which that Louise and Allen have endured, tit for tat. Technical review. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to the following departments and external agencies for their review: Planning, Engineering, Fire, Legal, Public Works, Conservation Authority, and Algoma Public Health had no objections. Building, PUC Services, and Bell Canada right-of-way did not respond. And again, I apologize because building then subsequently sent a response. Building division staff has no objections to this application, but the proposed development on the property will require compliance with the Ontario Building Code and all applicable authorities. A review and approval from the city building division and issuance of a building permit will also be required. Please note that this address has an open permit for an addition onto the existing main building. The building division would like the owner to take all necessary action in order to get this permit finalized. And I just point out that Mr. Avery cannot obtain that permit until the committee makes their decision here today. So it's not as if he's been remiss on getting the permit. Planning division staff noted that the property is a corner lot with frontage along Point Louise Drive and Harriet Street. The structure that is subject to this application is oriented towards Harriet Street, which is a short dead end road. Given the nature of this road and that no concerns were raised during public notification, planning staff have no objections. Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority advised that any development on the subject property will require a site plan review and may require a permit from the Conservation Authority. In consultation with Ange and Ammon, the development of a second-story, second unit addition of the boathouse will require a site plan review. Should this development increase the footprint of the boathouse in any way, a Conservation Authority permit will be required. Considerations for the committee are no objections from staff. The owners of 7 neighboring property owners submitted written support of the requested variances. No evidence has been submitted to suggest that approval would create a negative impact, and consider an advisement regarding the existing open building permit. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair. Again, Mr. Avery and Mr. Acton are in attendance.
Just one addition. Yesterday, we received a letter of support from 56 Allagash Drive, which is consistent with the and I can send you leave this up to file. And with respect to any increase in the footprint of the old house, no, there's no increase, and we will.
Any questions from committee members?
Make a motion to approve the
With the advisement?
yes.
Thank you. Okay. So moving on to tab 8 on your agenda, which is an application from Fernando Manarino. Application is B2722. The subject property is 180 Roosevelt Avenue, and Mrs. Manarino is in attendance. The subject property is located on the east side of Roosevelt Avenue between North Eden Street and Whitney Avenue. It is designated residential in the official plan and is zoned R2, single unit residential, and EM environmental management zone. The intent of the application is, whereas bylaw 2005-150 requires a minimum lot area of 15 meters and a minimum lot area of 550 square meters, the applicant is seeking the committee's consent to sever and convey one lot from the subject property being 30.86 meters by 62.74 meters and having an area of approximately 1,936.17 square meters. That's set out a little bit differently, specifically to show the committee and those circulated on the application that the parcel being proposed is significantly larger than what is required by the bylaw. The remnant residentially developed parcel would be 36.58 meters by 62.74 meters, again, larger than what is required by the existing bylaw, and have an area of approximately 2,295.01 square meters. The intent of the application is to create one additional residential lot for future development purposes. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties, by posting a sign on site, and by posting on the city website. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Building, planning, engineering, legal, fire services, public works, Bell Canada right-of-way, and the Conservation Authority had no objections. Building Division had no objections, but wished to remind the applicant that any development of the property in the future will require compliance with the Ontario Building Code and all applicable authorities, review and approval from the City Building Division, and issuance of a building permit. Planning staff advised that this proposal represents small-scale infill development on a large, underutilized lot within the municipally serviced urban area of the city. The proposed site plan conforms to all zoning regulations of the single detached residential zone, including setbacks, lot area, and lot frontage. Provincial and municipal policy plans promote a range of housing types to meet the changing needs of the community, as well as residential infill where municipal infrastructure exists. This proposal is compatibility with the subject neighborhood. No land use impacts are anticipated. From the approval of this application, planning staff have no objections. Engineering staff advised that the new lot requires a sanitary lateral and driveway culvert permit. Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority advised that any development, either the retained or severed portion of the property, will require a permit from the Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority. Considerations for the committee. Previous approval was granted in 2007, but was never acted on. Staff support the current request. No response from neighboring property owners who were advised of this request. No evidence that approval would create a negative impact. Conditions to be applied but not limited to any approval are provision of a registered survey plan, payment of a certificate fee, payment of cash in lieu of parkland, provision of applicable transfer documents, discharge or partial discharge of any charge or mortgage, payment of municipal taxes, and compliance with zoning bylaw provisions. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair. And again, Mrs. Manarino is in the gallery. Thank you. Moving on to tab 9 of your agenda. And John Stefanizzi is here. Yes, there you are. I can't even see you there. Okay, application B2822. John and Lori Stefanizzi are the owners of 154-156 Church Street. It is located on the easterly side of Church Street between Queen Street East and Wellington Street East. It is designated residential in the official plan and is zoned R3 low-density residential. The applicants are seeking the committee's consent to sever and convey the subject property into two independent lots, one being approximately 11 meters by 42.79 meters, and the other being approximately 11.8 meters by 42.79 meters, and each having a minimum lot area of approximately 474 square meters. The intent of the application is to provide autonomous title to each semi-detached residential unit. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and by posting on the city website. As part of the review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Building, planning, engineering, legal, fire services, PUC services, public works, Bell Canada right-of-way, and the Sault Ste. Marie Conservation Authority had no objections. Building division had no objections, but wished to advise that the existing party wall must be reviewed to ensure continuity and fire resistance rating between the two units. There is an existing 24-foot by 24-foot detached garage located in the rear yard of 154 Church Street. Documents in the building file indicate that the garage is 4 feet away from the south property line. Review of draft survey must be completed to ensure the garage will not encroach into required yards once property is severed. Mr. Chair, I would add at this point that Mr. Stefanitzi has undertaken the review of the party wall and will be providing the required information to the building division. As for the detached garage, I do get a copy of the draft plan on which all buildings have to be illustrated and approved before it can be registered, and any variance that might or might not be required is identified at that time. Engineering staff advised that their records indicate that the units have separate sanitary laterals. PUC services advised that although they have no objections to the severance proceeding as proposed, they respectfully request that the city make a condition of severance that easements be registered on title by the applicant if applicable. These easements would be with respect to water and electrical servicing to the building, which appear in our records to be such that they would cross property lines prior to severance. Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority advised that any development on either the retained or severed portion of the property will require a permit from the Conservation Authority. Considerations: no evidence that approval would create a negative impact. Conditions to be applied but not limited to any approval are provision of a registered survey plan, payment of certificate fee, payment of cash in lieu of parkland, provision of applicable transfer documents, discharge or partial discharge of any charge or mortgage, payment of taxes, compliance with zoning bylaw provisions, easements for water and electrical servicing to the building if required, and satisfy the chief building official or as designated that the existing party wall meets the required fire resistance rating between the two units. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair.
No, I'm aware of that. I'm trying to get that installation wall. Yeah, I'm okay. Any questions?
Sorry.
Thank you. We'll move to item 10 on your agenda, which is application B2922, an application from John Phillip and Catherine Lynn Allen, who are the owners of 1100 Wallace Terrace. It is located on the northeast corner of Wallace Terrace and Allen Side Road. It is designated residential in the official plan and is zoned R2 single unit residential and EM environmental management. The applicants are seeking the committee's consent to sever and convey the subject property into two lots. The most westerly lot to front on Allen Side Road being 28.9 meters by 202.3 meters and having an area of 0.57 hectares. The other to front on Wallace Terrace being 166.2 meters with an irregular depth and having an area of 2.07 hectares. The intent of the application is to create one additional residential lot for future residential development purposes. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and by posting on the city website. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Building, planning, engineering, legal, fire services, building services, public works, Bell Canada right-of-way, and the Conservation Authority had no objections. Building Division had no objection, but wished to advise that development of the property will require compliance with the Ontario Building Code and all applicable authorities. A review and approval from the City Building Division and issuance of a building permit will also be required. Engineering staff advised that drainage to Bennett Creek must be maintained. They further advise that there are no laterals to the subject property. However, sanitary sewers are available in the municipal road allowance. Staff requested that any approval be made conditional upon providing the required 3-meter road widening to the city, free and clear of any encumbrance. Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority advised that any development on either the retained or severed portion of the property will require a site plan review and may require a permit from the Conservation Authority. No evidence, considerations for the committee, excuse me. There's no evidence that approval would create a negative impact. Conditions to be applied but not limited to any approval are provision of a registered survey plan, payment of a certificate fee, payment of cash in lieu of parkland, provision of applicable transfer documents, discharge or partial discharge of any charge or mortgage, payment of municipal taxes, compliance with zoning bylaw provisions, and provision of a 3-meter widening strip along the frontage that abuts Allen Side Road. And Mr. Allen has indicated that he's satisfied with those conditions. Not that he has much choice.
I was surprised.
Sorry. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair.
Subject property always had 2 different surveys. Last time there was 2 different PIN numbers on one property. So it was sold as 2 separate properties. On that after, property 7. Like I say, it was surveyed.
The issue arose when title to both pieces was taken in the same title, common title. Under the Planning Act, that causes the properties to merge. Yeah.
Make a motion.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Moving along to tab 11. Application B3022, Lisa Felton and Amy Ward are the owners of 120 Cunningham Road, and they are both in the gallery. It is located on the southwest corner of Cunningham Road and Edmund Street. It is designated residential in the official plan and is zoned R2 single detached residential. The committee and the gallery may recognize that it was a former Tai Chi Society structure. The applicants are seeking the committee's consent to sever and convey the westerly 15.85 meter by 41.14 meter fronting on Cunningham Road and having an approximate area of 740 square meters. The intent of the application is to create one additional residential lot for future residential development purposes. Notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and on the city website. As part of the application review, this proposal was circulated to internal departments and external agencies for their review. Building, planning, engineering, legal, fire services, and the Conservation Authority had no objections. PUC Services, Public Works, and Bell Canada right-of-way did not respond. Building Division advised that after reviewing the building file and all permit records, it has come to my attention that the use of the existing building has changed from a church/community use to a single-family dwelling without first obtaining all of the required permits and approvals from City Building Division. The owners must apply for and obtain a permit for a change of use. If renovations have been undertaken as part of the conversion, the change of use permit can be included in the permit for the renovations. In any event, the owners must contact the Building Division at their earliest convenience to discuss their options. Understanding that the intended use of the existing building is as a single-family dwelling, there will be no concerns relating to spatial separation or fire resistance ratings for exterior walls. I should point out that the owners had applied to the Building Division for those permits, It just so happened that their application and my notice got to the inspector for the area before he was advised that they had applied. And so that's all clarified. Engineering staff advised that a new sanitary lateral will be required at the new lot. Considerations, no evidence that approval would create a negative impact. Conditions to be applied but not limited to any approval are provision of registered survey plan, payment of certificate fee, payment of cash in lieu of parkland, provision of applicable transfer documents, discharge or partial discharge of charge or mortgage, payment of municipal taxes, compliance with zoning bylaw provisions, advisement to be noted, obtain a permit for change of use, and provide a new sanitary lateral. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair. And again, Ms. Felton and Ms. Ward are in the gallery. That's with the advisement.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to the final matter on our agenda. Application B3222, 79 Bingham Street. It is located on the northwesterly side of Bingham Street between Bay Street and Queen Street East. It is designated commercial in the official plan and is zone C2 central commercial and is subject to site plan control. The owner of the property is seeking the committee's consent to convey an easement over the rear 11.4 meters by 6.86 meters portion of the subject property, further described as Part 2 and 1R 13935, in favor of Civic number 519 to 527 Queen Street East, Peterstone Holdings Limited, and Civic number 513 to 515 Queen Street East, 1309939 Ontario Limited, for access purposes. Again, notice of public hearing was sent by personal mail to neighboring properties by posting a sign on site and by posting on the city website. Building, planning, engineering, legal, fire services, public works, the Conservation Authority, and Bell Canada right-of-way had no objections. PUC services did not respond. No evidence was presented or has been presented that would create a negative impact. Conditions to be applied but not limited to any approval are provision of registered survey, payment of certificate fee, provision of applicable easement documents. And those are my submissions, Mr. Chair.
To approve.
That would be it. We can adjourn, Mr. Chair.